Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto survived the deadly battles and built a powerful harem with Hinata, Sakura, Ino, Kurenai, Tenten, Anko, Hanabi, Isaribi, Yakumo and Shizuka Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Kurenai. Despite the tickle of concern in the back of her mind, Kurenai is leisurely waiting in her favorite tea shop. It was his idea, which made her suspect, if anything, that he wanted her in a good mood. The question of why he wants her in an amiable mood doesn't fill her with a wonderful feeling. If she listens to her minor feeling of dread, it tells her clearly, he's trying to soften the blow, which, at times, makes Kurenai hate her psychology training. She's been working with her genin team, Hinata in particular, for a week now, and though there hasn't been many setbacks, she hasn't witnessed any progress beyond what one might expect of heirs of great clans. Hinata, herself, barely speaks, and when she does it's always clipped and hyper-formal. Even with the beautiful girl staying in her home, it's hard to get her to open up about much of anything. The gruff, broad-shouldered Asuma arrives then, expressing minimal remorse in his usual non-cavalier manner. Sorry I'm late. The way his large frame casually settles for comfort rather than proper posture makes her smile as she comments, so long as I don't see you reading a little orange book next time, I think I can forgive you. He chuckles at the ludicrous insinuation before he orders the finest tea in the shop, something of a warning sign in her eyes, but she only smiles. He then tells her, I just came from Hokage Tower. Princess Tomoko will be visiting the village. Kurenai listens intently, but her mind is moving a mile a minute. Being the son of the Hokage, who's also closely acquainted with the nation's daimyo, the Lord of Fire Country naturally entertained the notion of joining their families to strengthen their power, the Hokage's son with one of his daughters, princesses of Fire Country. It's the reason Asuma never truly connected with her, or at least that's what he told her. He wanted to spare her the unavoidable heartache should the whimsical daimyo ever decide to follow through with his ideas of union through marriage. Kurenai told herself it made sense, and he informed her early on when they first started dating. It hadn't stopped him from being with other women, but Kurenai was the only one that earned the heart of the truth from him. Though Asuma ended it before they had become too serious, Kurenai always held out hope that the gruff Sarutobi heir would finally be free to lead his own romantic life. So it hurt her every time she heard about one of his notable escapades or saw him with a loveless beauty of the night. Never being one for a purely physical relationship with a man, Kurenai herself had tried to date others, shinobi and civilian alike. Unlike her dear friend Anko, Kurenai found it hard to connect emotionally as well as intellectually with anyone she may be seeing. She just couldn't help thinking about Asuma, couldn't help comparing whoever she was with to the smoking jonin. Couldn't help thinking, what was he doing? What would he think? Would it hurt him to see or hear about me with another man as much as it does her when she sees or hears about his relations? With her looks, Kurenai comes across many interested men. That was never the problem. She tried to focus on their positives, and if that was good, the relationship would last longer. But after some time, she would always find faults with them, then fixate on that like a blaring red warning sign signaling the doom to come before ending it. It was almost like she was ending things with others so as to not hurt them in the same manner Asuma does in his relations. When she realized that, Kurenai had to stop. Consequently, the last time she had was a solid year ago, the exact time she decided to simply put forth all her abundant energy into being promoted to jonin. More often than not, marriages among the elite were generally based on alliances for monetary gain or political maneuvering to avoid war. Marriage for love is a distant concern, if at all addressed. Happiness was not a reason to get married. And now a beautiful princess of Fire Country is coming to the village, in all likelihood to meet her future husband, the same man that's already claimed Kurenai's heart. At Asuma's comment, Kurenai said nothing, raising her fragrant and scintillating tea to her lips for a sip. I'll be honest, Asuma continues. By the end of her visit, I'll know more or less what my future looks like. Kurenai, I know this isn't fair, but I hope you'll be a part of my life no matter what way this thing lands. You know I'll do my duty if I have to, but if it doesn't have to come to that. I feel that would make me happy, he tells her with his gruff smirk. She almost returned a smile, but if this didn't pan out the way they both want, that would lead to a hope that would hurt worse than any other time before. Why don't we just enjoy our tea and catch up, she says, preferring to wait and see instead of diving into what ifs. We've been so busy, it's been a spell since I've seen you. How's your team? Please tell me you're not smoking around them. If you saw what I was dealing with, you'd light one up too, he returns with a small measure of exasperation. Not a single one is motivated to train. Shikamaru only cares about napping and sky gazing. It's like he skipped adolescence, adulthood, and went straight into elderly. Ino only cares about her figure and the Uchiha brat, bossy as hell too. Choji's a sweet kid, made us all celebration dango to celebrate forming the team, but even his own clan might think he eats too much and he lets Ino walk all over him. Sounds like you got your hands full, she mentions sympathetically. Better than Kakashi's, but yeah, they're a pain, he responds. Still, I like him well enough to train him good. Plus, they saved me from having to go to the daimyo's palace. Can't exactly take the brats with me, can I? Kurenai didn't want to ask but she couldn't not know, is that why she's coming here? Every little bit of information aids her constantly active mind in forecasting what the likely future might be. Otu-sama made it clear to the daimyo that training shinobi for the good of the country supersedes something that may or may not happen, so he extended an invitation for her to come here. Kurenai just nods before he asks, how's your team? You haven't been Jonin for more than 3 months and now you're training Genin. Nervous. She can tell he's teasing and smiles as she tells him, I haven't had them long, obviously. It's only been a week, but I'm reasonably optimistic. Shino-kun is diligent. Kiba-kun is impulsive, type of personality with a lot of energy. Hinata-chan is very shy but very caring. I'm working with her the most. I think she can be an amazing kunoichi if I can just find the right incentive to get her moving. I'm sure you'll figure something out, he responds. You've always cared like that, he states meaningfully, and Kurenai can't help but wonder if he means in general, like any sensei or as a possible mother someday in the future they would both be happy with. Naruto. We want to learn Rasengan in 2 months, Naru-ni explains to his past self-student. It took the fourth 3 years to master this technique. Divide 3 years by the 2 months I'm giving you to learn this and you'll need no less than 20 clones while you train. I'm learning a technique made by the 4th Hokage. Naruto gasps with twinkling amazement. Finally. Not that I don't appreciate you teaching me, but I was starting to get sick of all the control exercises. I like being able to fight on top of water, but nothing beats ninjutsu, ya know. You'd be surprised, Naru-ni hints as he sometimes does about things he never has the time to fully explain. Beyond the border there's a pretty big world out there with a lot of weird ninja who can do some crazy stuff that beat ninjutsu. I guess, Naruto answers, accepting his future self's assertion. Anyway, this is an A- rank technique. It's an offensive, short-range jutsu. You ready? Hell yeah, Naruto yells in his mind as much as the outside world. Alright, are you deep in the forest? Near a water supply? Far enough away so no one stumbles in on your training? Yeah, Naruto responds, recalling the strength training to get to a secluded area. 3 hours deep, and a stream nearby, just like you said. And you brought a bag of balloons and rubber balls? Naru-ni asks. In my bag, Naruto answers, patting his travel backpack filled with the items requested, a lot of ramen, and some camping gear. Good. To start, make 5 clones and have them use half the bag to make water balloons. Naruto does as instructed, and Naruni spends the remainder of his time explaining the first step of learning Rasengan, rotation. Even with all the tips Naruni gave him, it's a lot harder than he expected, but giving up has never been his style. Along with his clones, Naruto spends the rest of the day trying to churn the water's rotation in different directions using nothing but his chakra. He didn't notice it was nightfall until he fell flat on his back, exhausted to sickness from the hours of chakra use. Deciding he didn't have it in him to trek the 3 hours back to his apartment, he prepares several cups of instant ramen as he slowly dispels one clone at a time, ending his day knocking out in his sleeping bag. To warm up, Naruto spends the morning training his body with strength training and close-quarter taijutsu against his clones. After lunch, he again focuses on the first stage of Rasengan. Hours later, he hadn't been able to pop the water balloon, but instead of spending another day in the forest, he figured he could practice in his apartment, plus he didn't have the discipline to stretch out his 10 remaining cups of ramen for more than a day. Dirty, smelly, grimy, hungry, covered in twigs and petals of flora, Naruto drags his feet out of the forest. Finally closing in on the village, Naruto doesn't notice the purple and white starling bird dive down with great speed toward his head, pulling up at the last second to scare the blonde into jumping back and tumbling to the dirt floor. What th? He calls, but the bird swipes at him again. Naruto runs away covering his head with his arms the entire time, but the purple and white bird doesn't relent, chasing after him. The frustration makes him swipe and miss as he yells, "Leave me alone, bird-chan." It seems to have it out for him until he finally manages a lucky hit and knocks it to the ground. He felt relief for the briefest of moments until he realizes the pretty bird isn't moving, then crippling remorse floods his entire aching system. Though panicked, he gently picks the injured bird up and rushes to the village. Ino. Yua. Ino gasps, clutching her head as she sits up in her bed. That baka, she yells, tensing her entire body down to her curled toes, waiting for the throbbing ache in her head and the spinning sensation in her realigning body to subside. The worst of it passes after 20 minutes, but it's only the worst, and Ino fully expects to sport a headache throughout the rest of her day. Allowing herself to fall back into her pillow, heavily panting, as if she just sprinted for an hour straight, she recalls the last few moments before being forcibly ejected from her jutsu. Not long after her father taught her their family's Shintenshin no Jutsu, mind transfer jutsu, Ino would use it as often as she could. Though it counted as training, her main point of attraction was transferring her consciousness into the minds of animals, mostly pretty birds, so she could thrill at the majesty of flying high in the sky with the entire world below her. It made her feel small compared to the size of the land, yet empowering for having the sight to take in the first place. Recalling the shock to her system when that idiot landed a lucky hit reminds her of the very nasty downside to the jutsu. There is a lot of pain that comes with being forced out of the mind transfer. Despite the throbbing anguish in her head, going so far as to make her forehead and neck sweat, she immediately sits up again, focusing deeper on one detail of her out-of-body attack on the dead last. It's a dull growth of monumental realization as she slowly leaves her spacious bedroom, and ends up running by the time she reaches her father's study. The room is normally only used by him, but it has all their books on botany, from roots to poisons and all the various ways they can be used. With her pounding headache, Ino has to put great effort into focusing as she quickly skims through various books and scrolls. After some time, she finally comes upon several specific books that might help her remember why that distinct petal stuck to Naruto's disgusting jumper is so important. It must have been years ago, but she knows that petal came from an orchid. 15 minutes of searching and Ino wonders if she's made a mistake with the book currently in hand and has to read through all the books to find out why this is so important. Make no mistake, Ino knows it's important, she just couldn't say why yet. That is until she finally finds it on the highest row, the fourth to last book. Rarest flowers in the world, she breathes, and the image of the petal on Naruto's back, under the white flap, begins encouraging bits of information she'd long stored away when she first read this book. Flipping through the pages, Ino surely finds the target of her query. The fire slipper orchid, she reads aloud, slowly moving to her father's comfortable chair behind his desk. With the photo alone, she instantly confirms the petals from the book and the one stuck on Naruto's jumpsuit were the same. One of the rarest orchids in the 5 nations, characterized by its red stripes and long side petals. Primary area of growth is forests within elevated areas from 950 feet to 1,300 feet above sea level. Not only is the flower rare, but it can take up to 15 years to blossom. Ino broke eye contact with the book in great surprise, easily understanding why the orchid was so rare. Returning her attention to the reading, she learns exactly why her spectacular mind was so fixated on the petal. Because it's so difficult to find, much less grow within a controlled environment, this orchid species has a high market value where it is sold for as much as 750,000 ryo per stem. Eyes wide, Ino leans back in utter shock at its value, the compounding aches in her brain doing little to slow down thinking of all the possibilities. Her most immediate concern being that bottle of perfume she absolutely begged her parents to get. She has an allowance and was more than ready to use it all if it were enough. She tried everything, but her parents wouldn't give her the remainder, they wouldn't give her an advance, and they wouldn't even give her extra shifts at the flower shop since it would cut other employee hours. Ino needs that bottle and whatever else would give her an edge. She's already losing more ground to the forehead than she'll willingly admit to, lest she stumbles into a great ice cream-filled depression. For the 1000th time, she wondered why she couldn't be teamed up with Sasuke-kun instead of Team 10. And for the 1000th time, her brain told her it was because of her father's partnership with Shikamaru and Choji's dads. She felt the injustice constrain her chest every time she thought of it. It was wrong to assume she would make a good team with the and the simply because the 3 clans grew up close. It's not that she hated her teammates, but they definitely stood in her way, blocking Sasuke-kun from view, and letting the forehead that much closer to her man. She'll be the first to admit she didn't need to be irrationally angry with her teammates, she knows it's not really their fault but she just can't help it. It gets to her every time the just wants to sleep, or the just wants to eat, which happens all the time. The constant crunching of salty chips slowly drives her mad until she can't help but snap at them. It's not how she wants to spend her days and they, including her smokestack of a sensei, don't even seem to care. Ever since the team assignments, she's been having one miserable day after another, but this, she thinks, looking at the picture of the beautiful orchid. This changes everything, she comments to herself, smiling all the while. She hadn't felt very pretty in a while, but the possibility of finding the rare, expensive flower is rejuvenating. Doing the calculations in her head, her eyes go wide. That's at least an A- rank mission without the hard work or splitting it with the team. Quickly standing to her feet, hugging the book happily, she realizes aloud, and if there's more than one stem, that's way over S-class pay, just for me. Her mind is a cloud of euphoria for seemingly hours until one unpleasant thought bursts that intoxicating bubble of happiness. Naruto. Groaning in pain, she rushes back to her room. Rather than changing into her typical shinobi gear, she merely hops into a white mini skirt and her purple halter top that shows off her taut stomach and rushes out the door in search of the orange idiot, praying the entire time, I hope that idiot didn't destroy it. If the red and black stripped petal was stuck on his back, then clearly, he must have landed on one. Ino prays to Kami that the rare, highly valuable flower wasn't too badly damaged, or that there's at least one more stem out there. Finally finding him in the market, exiting a food stand with a disgustingly distended belly, looking just as filthy as she remembered from her time in the Starling, she rushes straight at him. Naruto, she calls the orange-clad boy, suddenly feeling the physical exertion of running around the village for over an hour with dull throbbing head pain. It hurts so bad, she wonders if her swollen head is as big as Sakura's. With her hands on her knees as her strained and hot lungs painfully catch her chalky breath, she notes the golden blonde idiot is clearly curious about her sudden appearance. And why wouldn't he be, she imagines. Ino knows this the first time she's ever sought him out, much less this desperately. Hey, you okay? He asks with a clear note of concern in his voice. She puts up a single finger, hoping he understands she wants him to wait. After a minute, she grabs him by the shoulder. Hey, what the? He complains as she pulls the red striped petal that was stuck on him, caught under the white turtleneck of his atrocious jacket. Examining the soft, colorful, fine-haired petal. It was indeed the extremely valuable plant from the Book of Rare Flowers. Turning to him, she demands to know, where did you get this? The startled agitation was clear on his face, and his eyes squint with suspicion, but he looks at the petal in her hand and answers, what is it? Her eyebrow twitches, but Ino valiantly holds in her frustration. Taking a deep calming breath, she looks around and notices all the faces, some looking at her with lewd gazes, but some looking, well, glaring, at the boy next to her. The worry in her mind, however, isn't in how much thigh or stomach she's showing, or even in how innately Naruto seems to annoy everyone. It's in the idea that someone in this busy marketplace might know the value of what she's holding in her hand. Without a second thought, she commands him, come on, as she grabs him by the collar of his filthy jumpsuit, pulling him along with her. After 20 minutes of marching, they're in a small deserted park, and she turns to him, staying as close to his sweaty musk as she can stand so he doesn't grate her patience too much. Normally she would have said something by now, but this is too important to risk. Naruto, she starts. I need to know where you came across this flower. You sure that's a flower? He asks, peering at the flattened petal. Doesn't look like one. That's because you. Ino cuts herself off and takes a breath. The last thing she wants to do is make this unnecessarily harder by insulting him too much. Look, this is a flower petal from an orchid that I'm looking for. I think it was stuck to your back because you fell on it. So I really need you to tell me where you've seen a flower with this kind of petal. Naruto hums in deep thought for several seconds before answering, I'm not sure. I don't really pay attention to flowers, especially when I'm training. Is that what you were doing today? She asks excitedly, scanning his rough and sweaty exterior. Where were you training? Well, he starts nervously. I can't say, he weakly finishes, but she's not taking no for an answer. Naruto, please, she pleads, her bewitching face instantly forming an adorable charming look she uses on her father when she really wants something. She even bends her knees so she's looking up at him, using the psychology that says men normally prefer to look down into a girl's eyes than up. She's also quite aware that he ought to be able to see a bit of cleavage, not to say she's the most abundant in that area, but she's certainly ahead of many kunoichi, developing quicker than most. She can easily tell it's working by the way he flusters and tries to avoid looking too far down. I really need this, she whines prettily. Won't you help me? Anyo, Naruto fumbles, looking at her chest a moment before clearing his throat and looking at her pupil-less blue eyes. Sure, not completely for effect, she jumps up happily with a giggle. I'll help, but, you absolutely cannot tell anybody where I'm taking you, it's my secret training spot. I guess. Where is it? She asks curiously. How could any training ground in Konoha be secret? She mentally asks. All active shinobi use them, you idiot. It's in the forest, about 3 hours north of the Hokage monument, he answers. What? She gasps. Why would you train so far away? It's secret training that's going to make me the strongest ninja in Konoha. He happily tells her. Though she doesn't believe for a second that the dead last in their class can beat anyone, let alone be the strongest anything, she says nothing, content to play along until she has her treasure secure in her hands. He continues to say, that also means I can't show you what I'm doing. I don't mind taking you where I was, but you can't see my training. Sorry, he awkwardly tells her as if she cared. She may have completed a step in her journey, but now she has to travel 3 hours through a dense forest without any assurances that the flowers there are still intact if it is. You're sure you don't remember seeing it? She asks again, moving the petal closer to his face. Sorry, Ino-chan, he replies. She ignores the chan as he continues, I more or less remember where I was, so I can take you there, but I was too focused on my training to remember any flowers. He chuckles at his own idiocy and it annoys her, but she moves on. I have a team meeting tomorrow morning. It shouldn't be anything serious, like training, she clarifies. He just wants to tell us something important, so I can meet you afterward, by the Hokage monument. Sweet, he says brightly. I'll see you tomorrow. And with that he was off, leaving her in delicious anticipation of better days to come. Finally, she yells. Ino felt she needed something good, and for it to happen as soon as tomorrow, was thrilling. Ino walked home content and ready for good fortune to take her. Meeting at their usual tea shop, Asuma-sensei took a single drag of his cigarette prompting her to yell, either put that out or tell us what this is about, sensei. That's horrible for my skin, you know. I actually agree with her, Shikamaru tells his sensei. This is our day off and it's really early. It's 9 am, Asuma corrects the lazy boy with a smirk. Like I said, as all Shikamaru responds with. These three, Asuma mutters to himself before explaining why he called their meeting. I called you all here because Konoha will be hosting one of the Fire Daimyo's daughters, Tomoko Harem. During her stay here, I'll be her escort, so I won't be able to stay with you for most of the day like we've been doing. That doesn't mean I want any of you to slack off. Are we going to meet the princess? Ino asks hopefully. Maybe, Asuma answers after taking a sip of his tea. You're my students after all. That's pretty much it. Any questions? Are we still doing D ranks? Choji asks between a handful of chips, his constant, audible chewing annoying Ino to no end. We'll do a few for sure, but maybe not every day, Asuma answers the Akamichi. Anything else? No. Alright, dismissed. Asuma is already lighting his cigarette as he leaves his genin team and exits the shop. Before Ino can get more than a step away, Choji calls out to her. Ino-chan, wait. What is it? She throws out, annoyed, though making a small note of how weirdly Shikamaru is looking at his fat of a friend. I know you didn't like the celebration dango I made for us becoming a team, he starts to explain as he takes a container out of his pack where he keeps his potato chips. I thought I'd make one special for you though. He opens the container to show a single stick of a yellow, a red, and a blue dango. This one is super low calorie, barely any carbs, no sugar, no salt and fat-free. It's basically little better than water. He presents the special dango to her and instantly she feels bad for some of the horribly insulting thoughts she had of him. Regardless of how everything turned out, she knows none of it was their fault, and since she's going on a long hike, she decides to take the stick of dango. Thanks, Choji. That was really nice of you. The smile on his face surprised her. It wasn't so serious a thing he needed to be overjoyed over. Maybe he worked really hard on this, she thought as she ate the first two with delight. And I did throw away that last one he made. Maybe we can hang out since we have the day off, Choji suggests with a hopeful vigor, turning to Shikamaru. What do you say, Shikamaru? We can go to the park and play, or if you want to shop, we could do that too. Sorry, she starts, ripping the last blue dango from the long pick, before throwing the slim piece of wood into Choji's bag. I actually got plans today. Maybe next time. What are you doing? Shikamaru asks with bored suspicion. To the pineapple-headed boy, she seems slightly more chipper and less bossy than normal. No way. Ino mocks him in fake shock, before adding, is that genuine interest I hear? She smiles broadly at them before turning and leaving. She manages to hear the pineapple head mutter, troublesome, before she's out of earshot and on her way to the Hokage monument. Luckily it's not more than 15 minutes away from her team meeting spot. Yo! Naruto calls when he sees her. Morning, Ino-chan. Rolling her eyes at the chan he adds to her name, she returns a glum, no time for chit-chat. 3 hours there, 3 hours back, and I don't know how long it's going to take to find it. We don't have any time to waste, so let's go. With a weak chuckle he turns around and they begin their hike at a run. It starts 5 minutes in. For some reason, Ino grows warm, very warm, nearly flushed. As they jog over through leaf-invested grassy floors and over large tree roots, Ino begins to wonder about her physical well-being. The dead last isn't going any faster than she can handle, but the excessive warmth is beginning to pool primarily to her lower back, hips, and thighs, though it doesn't exempt her neck, cheeks, and bouncing. Ino tries to ignore it as her fogging mind reasons it was something she ate. However, soon, the salivating warmth invites a certain weakness to her feverish muscles. It was as if her well-conditioned control had been sucked out of her body, replaced by this tingling allergy spreading from her irritably stuffy pelvis down her humid thighs, up the flat of her toned abdomen, the swell of her torrid and her languid red neck. Ino had to stop jogging. Her uncooperative leg muscles were twitching and the sweat between her vibrating legs felt sticky. She didn't even realize how long she'd stopped for until Naruto is standing right in front of her, not even breathing heavily, expressing, "It's going to take us longer to get there if you don't hurry up." Jumping at the chance to utilize the heat of her anger rather than the oddly sensitive heat of her body, she musters enough airy voice to shout back, Shut up." It's the weakest comeback she's ever felt. "Just keep jogging," she finishes. Naruto shrugs before taking off again. Following after the golden blonde, Ino couldn't understand why her body was reacting this way, and what makes her start to panic is it's only getting worse. With every step she took, Ino felt her and the apex of her inner thighs getting hotter and hotter. A sensitive heat that continues its invasion to odd places she never really thought to feel before, like her ears, the back of her knees, between her toes, her cheeks, and even, to her horror, her sphincter. She can feel it twitch with a growing itch. Ino was soon walking again, breathing heavily despite only jogging for 5 or 10 minutes. She brings out her canteen of water, desperate for its cooling relief, but only finds the clear liquid can do nothing to bait this demanding heat growing within her. In fact, the trickles of water that splash away from her cherry red lips, and stream down chin and neck, seem to ignite her sensitive skin further. Nearly an hour in and she's sweating shamefully profusely. The way her fishnet stockings and white bindings stick to her sodden skin, and her damp purple top wrapping desperately around her tender C-cup and pebbled teats only fuels how incredibly obscene she feels at the moment. The raunchy royal purple rags of her typical outfit cling to her, stretching and pulling with every dragging step ahead, but that's not where her attention is drawn. No, all of Ino's focus is on the incredibly heat gathering in her core and her stone-hard nipples. Though embarrassed, the fog of her mind and the special kunoichi training help her avoid reacting on those shameful feelings, lest she turn back and end her mission for coming out here in the first place. It also helps Naruto is always leading them and can't see her, which is a relief as even the gentlest of breezes hazes her mind euphorically as it plays with her tingling body. It's odd, she thinks when her forgetful mind questions why she's following the hypnotic orange of the blonde's jumpsuit. As Ino wonders if they're playing a game of slow tag, her hand drops to the tender junction between her legs and the slightest of contact nearly takes her knees out, electrifying her with the most pleasure she's ever felt. So unaware of her surroundings, she didn't even realize the moan that she heard came out of her mouth until Naruto was right in front of her. She can barely make out how concerned he looks over the simple recognition of his maleness. "Nay, are you okay?" he asks, putting his warm hand on her shoulder. Ino bursts at the contact. She couldn't understand how a hand touching her bald, fleshy, sweaty shoulder can feel so deliciously thrilling. Ino simply couldn't think but for the urging of her basic needs and lurches forward, sending them both to the grassy floor. On his back with Ino landing on top of him, her hips react without consent, or in Ino's cloudy mind, without awareness, grinding her sodden crotch against his thigh, moaning freely of her ever-building pleasure. Ino becomes a being of continuous amazing sensation, lamely reasoning the strong muscle pressing against her needy crotch is contracting more pleasurable feelings with every single thrust. She isn't even aware of the blonde boy the strong thigh muscle is connected to as her hungry hips beg for more titillating stimulation, unconsciously grinding her leaking core against it repeatedly. Naruto. Naruto had no sense of what to do. He didn't know what Ino was doing. He didn't know why she was doing it, or why his thigh was growing more and more wet. But the fact of the matter is, Ino, one of the prettiest girls in the village, was straddled his left leg. Squishy. His mind sums it up. The purple flaps of her skirt gathered out of the way so he can clearly see her moist bandaged crotch rub itself vigorously against him. Her C-cup bounce inches away from his wide eyes and her constant weeping moans are regularly exhaled across his face. This is like, his mind yells, feeling the friction from his leg build to his crotch, stretching his pants. Looking at the mesmerizing way Ino ride his leg, Naruto can't help the bulge growing any more than he can say, "So hot." The act itself was familiar, if not exactly like how he had researched. Naruto easily remembers pictures of girls riding boys, but he didn't understand why Ino was doing that with him. From all his research into for his jutsu, he learned that having actual should be with someone you love, unless you pay for it, in which case, there's no love in that. But Ino kept on doing it. Rubbing her lower part on his thigh, moaning and whimpering loudly, inching closer and closer to his raging erection. Naruto notices the bandages loosen a moment before her sudden scream cuts through the serenity of the forest. Then, as if her voice shorted, her head snaps back, alarming him as her pelvis slides up his thigh and press against his steel erection. She shivers and shakes uncontrollably, and the pained look on her face would worry him more if the tight warmth of their thighs squeezing against his didn't feel so good. She stays static and spams for at least 20 seconds before she collapses on her back, her legs going limp straddled over his lap. To Naruto, there's a lot going on from moment to moment that's more captivating than the next, but also none more so than the other. Her feverish red cheeks on her erotically satisfied face is no better or worse than the delightful groans of pleasure humming from her saliva-covered mouth. Nor was the drenched softness of her girl part pressing against his rock-hard rod between them any better or worse than the way one of her hands begins roughly rubbing her. He couldn't reason how this was happening, but he's never been one to shy away from asking. Leaning forward, her legs flop like jelly, spread open, and Naruto inspects the flush and heavily breathing girl as he crawls over her prone form a bit to reach her head. Nah, Ino, why did you MNN? Naruto is physically silenced when Ino tilts forward to wrap her arms around his neck and drag him down for a fierce kiss. She presses her full and soft lips hungrily against his. Naruto was stunned yet again when she opens her mouth to snake her tongue deep into his mouth and blend saliva. At her upward thrust, Naruto regains enough sense of mind to pull back, quickly asking, Ino, are you alright? Ino's benumbed mind didn't understand his question or his reluctance, simply voicing her womanly needs. Fill me up, Naruto. Make me feel good, Naruto. Make me feel good. She moans as she starts sucking on his neck while she pinches and pulls on one of her peaking nipples. You want me to? He tries, but he's losing focus, asking, how are you sure? Just me, Naruto, she yells, losing control of her hips as they try to connect to any stiff surface of his. Please, she mewls. I'm hurting. It hurts so much without your. She yells before forcibly taking his lips again. Naruto was harder than he's ever felt in his life, to the point his hurts from the constriction, and Ino was kissing him like her life depended on it. Without thought, Naruto's pelvis juts forward, pressing an impossibly constrained erection into the fleshy wet heat between her legs. A needy Ino moans into his mouth at the contact before she immediately pushes him up enough to pull her purple top off, her platinum blonde hair whipping back with it. Naruto's pelvis thrusts into her again and again, reveling in the pleasure of the wet warmth as she removes the safety pins of her binding. She couldn't peel it all off, but that wasn't the immediate need. Feeling his perfect and constant thrusts, she moans weakly as she nearly rips off the strangling ribbons, and that sound spurred him on. Years of training in reading body cues to understand an opponent is telling him she's desperate for this. He can hear her want in her animal cries and feel her need in her impulsive plunge back. Take off, Naruto hears her groan. Ino, he gasps his question, losing his ability to articulate the thought, what do you mean? Take off your pants, already. She yells as she finally frees enough of the white trapping to liberate her gleaming, pulsing to the open, forest air. It tingled enough to make her moan, and she began exploring the organ, bringing her amazing pleasure with both hands. It wasn't until she heard the zipper being drawn down like a chainsaw, that she came back to some form of minor awareness and realized this was Naruto on top of her. Naruto was the one making her feel good, but she couldn't think as to why that would be bad. Naruto was wildly stimulated, and his thoughts didn't stretch further than the most immediate and sustained pleasure, which couldn't be bothered to completely take off his pants or even think to remove his jacket and undershirt. He didn't waste any time liberating his rock-hard rod from the tight confines of his boxer, showcasing to Ino the thick length of his want for her. Looking down at it, Ino couldn't really compare him to anyone since she hadn't ever done this before, and most of the pictures she's seen were diagrams for educational purposes. Naruto was long, thick, with throbbing veins and round golden pube balls, but what really surprised her was how shapely the head of his was. Her hands instinctively reach for his hot meat stick. Despite its aggressive posture, it's smoother than she expected. She wonders if it should be so hot until she feels it pulse in her hand and hears him groan in satisfaction above her. To Naruto, he felt cold, and he only had a mind to be inside hot wetness. Ino felt hollow enough she might disappear and needed him to feel full again. She lined him to the entrance of her aroused canal, pressing his eager shaft against her swollen lips before he promptly thrusts into her. The two teens groan in unison, each feeling different sensations but equal in immense satisfaction. Ino's legs quake as all energy is sucked out of them. He's splitting me, Ino's mind yells with clenched teeth, easily feeling Naruto's veined member plunge to the end of her soaking snatch, pulsing impatiently. Naruto pulls out slowly with a wet schloop, dragging out a deep groan from Ino before stuffing her sloshing pleasure cavity. Instinctive for more, he pounds away into her, lost to anything but the pure pleasure in this gorgeous once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The size of him forces pain to register in her mind, but her drug-addled mind needed too much pleasure to tell him to slow down, or Kami help her, to stop. The new, intrusive experience didn't hurt much, if at all. She was vaguely aware that it was supposed to, not that her hymen was intact. The majority of kunoichi lose that barrier of flesh through rigorous exercise and training. In Ino's mind-numbing arousal, it isn't long after he first stuffed her to the brim with his meat that she's moaning loudly by his relentless thrusts, filling her with unbearable satisfaction in spite of how much he was stretching her to accommodate his girth. With the amount of fluids flooding her love channel, it didn't take Naruto more than 4 or 5 thrusts to completely sheath himself inside of her. "You Kami, Ino, you feel so good," Naruto hotly groans between grunts. "It's so tight, hot, wet." With every etch of her pleasure membrane deliciously being pulled by the thick head and veined girth of his member, Ino moaned continuously. With every thrust, Ino's hazy mind bursts with long echoing pleasure broadcasting to every inch of her body. It seemed like no time at all before Naruto was pounding his thick meat with fluid ease and she was moaning for more. "MNN, yes, Naruto. More." Ino gasps. "Place please, harder. I'm almost," she begged, as his bulbous head would tongue her cervix with fluid ease, pulling fantastically at her squeezing walls on its way out before his entire shaft would fill her sponge tunnel completely again, ripping an ahhnn out of her every time. Ino was lost in a whirlpool of pleasure as a result of Naruto's devastating rod, and her moist vagina squeezes his sensitive shaft hungrily, begging for its nourishment. "Ino," Naruto calls, feeling like he's getting close to deliciously breaking apart. Naruto knows he's close and he knows it'll be great when, without warning, the frothy walls of her vagina snap shut, clamping on his sensitive, sending him over a peak that feels explosive in pleasure. Naruto buries himself with one final thrust, burying himself in her quaking hold to his balls, an empty week's worth of gelatinous cum inside of her. Feeling the molten semen filling her small cavity triggers a second more powerful orgasm, and Ino's eyes roll into her head, her toes curl intensely like they've grown a fourth joint to bend further, and she clings to Naruto's as she blacks out from the sheer waves of euphoria drowning her sweaty body. As her body held and squeezed a groaning Naruto, he wasn't aware that she had passed out. As he fills Ino's sanctuary with line after line of his thick ejaculate, what Naruto couldn't be told as unusual about how he comes was that do not swell at the base to twice their girth. That's an animalistic characteristic not found in normal humans, but as Ino was unconscious for her first ever cream pie, she would have to tell him after the second round. "Ino." Sound is the first thing Ino becomes aware of. "Oh," she hears him grunt lewdly in tandem with a repeated wet smacking noise. "So good, Ino-chan. You feel so good," Ino hears, slowly opening her glossy eyes to the hypnotic rocking of the tall trees above and the boy eagerly her. Ino's boneless legs were wrapped securely around the cunt-humping blonde, and she was flush against him with his head beside hers. The pleasure all rushes back to her like growing pains, and very quickly, Ino automatically returns his amorous affection without question. Him just as in her cerebellum is immediately rushed with an overpowering amount of mind-numbing pleasure, triggering miniature quakes up and down her arched spine and throughout her sweaty body. "You're so beautiful." The blonde praises her between a long series of flesh-smacking thrusts. "So beautiful." Ino met him eagerly thrust for thrust, and she couldn't fathom as to how. He felt so much stronger than her, bigger, hotter, impossibly perfect inside of her. His grip, his thrust, the molten steel pounding inside her, reach her upper walls easily to that lovely spot that seems to shoot unimpaired jolts of lightning throughout her entire body, forcing her to arching her lower back deeply and spread her legs as far as she can to give him all the access he wants. He was unrelenting, and she accepted the pure bliss of submitting to him unashamed. The tension in her lower stomach builds faster than she's ready for, adding that extra bit of concern for her sanity. "Keep going. Keep. Single quote exclamation mark. My little cunt," she happily yells, letting the waves of mounting pleasure roll over and over her into a higher precipice. "Whatever you do, don't, ahhn. Don't sss stop. On, it's coming again," she yells deeply and freely. I'm coming, I'm cummingggggg. She moans greatly, hoarsely as the astounding pressure within explodes with pleasure, short-circuiting all brain function but for the eternal satisfaction of squeezing his hot, thick as she comes endlessly. With the quick shifts and jerks of her furnace-like gyrating hips, Naruto couldn't overcome how pleasurable her canal hosting him felt. With a final grunting thrust, he buried himself as deep as physically possible and discharged copious helpings of his thick seed inside her quaking meat sheath. With his most delicious waterfall being squeezed into her, Ino oddly wonders why his is swelling so much, an isolated thought that didn't last. As if her orgasm triggering his orgasm wasn't enough, feeling the boiling pool filling her so deeply, extending her walls and etching into sensitive fold, Ino saw white as her head shoots back and her scorching body is racked with another wave as mighty as the first burst, quaking and spasming mini contractions throughout her weakened constitution. She simply held on with taut arms in her stuffed, feeling more attached to him than Ino could have ever thought possible. Her plugged, quaked continuously, holding a copious amount of his spunk as her fevered body squeezes his spitting rock-hard appendage like a vice as if trying to memorize every vein and curve of his impressive manhood. Naruto's weight dropped on her like a sack of crushing water, but as even the roots of her platinum blonde scalp feels amazing, so too does the pressure of his weight on her. Time was meaningless as the warm mesh of perpetual pleasure rendered the lovers motionless. The last vestiges of restraint, of ration, of any lucidity, had long abandoned her, both of them, in truth. They've long since given up trying to explain the why of losing their virginity to each other. It couldn't matter when there was so much ecstasy to be had. Ino's hazy mind can't even process the connection of losing her virginity to someone she doesn't love, the dead last of their year, of all people, nor that it was little more than wild animals rutting savagely in the open forest floor. They stopped for the sake of resting their highly trained lethal bodies, however as ninjas, they didn't need much. With Naruto's boundless stamina and Ino's abnormal addiction to pleasure, both teenagers give in to their primal and unquenchable urges, satisfying each other again and again as if nothing else existed. Her mind was silent of any doubt or plan or consequence. The singular thoughts forming loudly in her loopy head as of submission, and in an odd way, liberation. In their momentary rest, he works his tongue and lips down her body, to the swollen center of her love tunnel. Naruto ate her out and she came so hard she squirted. He lapped it up, spouting something about ramen broth, and to her dull astonishment, Ino happily returns the favor. It was odd being faced with the appendage responsible for all her pleasure. From a boy she never, even in her wildest dreams, ever thought she would let in her mouth, let alone her body. And yet here she is, too high on the wonders of bliss and the source of it all to care about taking a firm, possessive hold of his base and licking the bulbous head. Her tongue brushes the underside of his thick shaft, and instead of disgust, she relished in the obscenity of their combined taste, a frothy nectar made of her juice mixing with his scrubbed cum. Ino lapped it up, cleaning his shaft thoroughly before taking him in her mouth, very much to his great pleasure. She never expected to like taking a man in her mouth. It's not a topic of conversation among the girls her age, but she's heard from other clan members. The older kunoichi would seem to repel at the way men expect this act, and so Ino always thought it was strictly a man's pleasure at the woman's expense. But when Naruto groans loudly, almost feebly, it gives her such a rush that she can control him like this, that she sucked him off like delicious candy. She can almost play him like a puppet, and it made her wet. That feels, so great, Ino. He would moan, both hands on her head. Your mouth is amazing. And it always thrilled her to hear. When he came, she didn't expect to like his tight, strong, and needy grip on her head as he groans to the high heavens. She also didn't expect to like his thick spunk being pumped down her throat. But more than anything, she didn't expect the cum pumping in her mouth to swell at the base to nearly twice its girth. That's different, is her only scrutiny on the impossible reaction as she swallows load after load like sucking on a baby bottle. It was satisfying in a primal way to be used so desperately for his pleasure, and Ino craves more. Flipping him on his back so she can straddle his waist, his thick manhood was stirring her pleasure sensitive. Seconds later, the afternoon sun soaked the wanton lovers as she rode him, her long silky hair, undone and catching the lowering light, and Naruto couldn't believe how beautiful she looked. Despite the eagerness of her gyrating hips, lifting and grinding down on his meat pole, his sky-blue eyes never left her erotic face contorted in absolute pleasure. When her pupil-less powder blue eyes lock on his intense gaze, she felt penetrated in a way she wasn't expecting. By now, she wouldn't bat an eyelash at the bliss of taking his large in her, or even releasing his wonderfully hot load in her young womb, but the eyes are the window to the soul, a part of her that was more vulnerable than even her body. Riding him felt different then, bigger, not simply in the act of intercourse but in the meaning behind him. He was looking at her like there were no tomorrows, like she was the world and time stood still. What they were doing was larger in that sense, and through the electric haze clouding her mind, she was compelled to turn away. Looking at the sky as tears strolled down her cheeks, Ino knows they don't love each other. They don't even know one another, not really. He sits up, adding a delicious angle of penetration, finding a spot that sent shivers up her spine as he wraps her clammy torso in his strong arms, calling her attention back to him. Don't, please, he pleads, his eyes expressing far more than his words. Let me see you. I just want, he groans as she meets his upward thrusts. To see you, your beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful face. His beautiful blue eyes relay a wealth of information that wouldn't allow her to look away. He was giving her the best of his everything, and that courage, to be so free and trusting with himself, with her, the thrill impulsively forces her body to clamp down on his greedy appendage. They both groan deeply at the sudden tightness, only allowing themselves a moment to enjoy it before his arms around her back and kept thrusting into her, all the while staring deeply into her vulnerability. The face she shows him, this euphorically pained face that no one's ever seen, and the way he craves for her the same way she craves for him, the tightly wound, massive coil in the core of her stomach snaps, seizing her entire body with gigantic crippling shocks and aftershocks. Her scream is loud and hoarse, as her body contorts and contracts wildly. With one final thrust, he buries himself to the balls and brilliantly coats her thirsty walls with whatever he has left, transferring even more powerful aftershock, battering her exhausted and spent body before he plugs her with his unique. After the massive inferno of pleasure is reduced to a humming simmer, she falls forward as his back finds the mushed grass. Both gasping for breath, Naruto holds her against him, indulging in the feel of her soft and hot moist skin against his. Ino can almost feel his smile as she rests her head by the side of his. When his now softened slips out, he groans almost sad about it. With the exception of swallowing one of his loads, Naruto preferred to finish inside of her. It must have felt great for him, her lucid thoughts suggests. She couldn't know that he really likes the connection, the closeness, the affection, the way she squeezes him hungrily for every ounce he has to offer. She just couldn't know what this means to him, because to her, his reputation was enough to avoid learning any more about him. At the first attempt to leave, Ino barely reached for her purple top before Naruto was on her again. Holding herself against the trunk of a tree, he her from behind, her legs spread wide enough for his ease of relentlessly deep pumping. Ino couldn't hold herself for long and kept sliding down the smooth bark. It was only due to Naruto's tight hold on her shapely hips that kept her remotely upright, until her taut core of pleasurable snaps with concussive force, and yet again, an explosion of mind-numbing pleasure rips through her spine and up her cranium, overloading her entire existence with unabated pleasure. As she rides wave after wave of unceasing pleasure, Her spasming meat pocket holds onto Naruto for dear life, causing him to break his spunk bank yet again to deposit a frothy helping of his thick cum. Gathering the superheated pool of his man milk in her filling uterus triggers her ascension to a realm made entirely of intense bliss, and Ino succumbs to a litany repeated orgasms. After much needed rest, they try again to leave, with either of them mindlessly voicing, "I think we should," and they move to reach for their clothes only for Ino wind up on all fours with Naruto gripping her hips and probing the wrong hole. "Why? Wait, Naruto." He manages to ask as he uses more force to poke through. "That's she says before a wicked moan rings in the air. Though Ino should feel repulsed by his mistake, her drug-addled mind recalls the itch of the scratch that was pulsing profoundly a finger's length inside her bowls. Naruto's reach was longer than her finger and his thrusts were insistent. "That's so hot," Naruto states, seemingly of the belief that she's as okay with this as she is with everything. Ino finds the more she relaxes her bowl and muscles, the more satisfying it becomes. Though she prefers he stuffs her. She finds she delights in anal play as well. The steadily increasing rhythm of his hooking bulbous head scratches her buzzing itch so deliciously, Ino is moaning just the same as if he was assaulting in her soaking. The way his balls hits her with every moist smack of their crotch was like being choked with pleasure until she couldn't breathe and died in ravenous euphoria. At the feeling of his thick pull filling her bowls, Ino passes out again from the intensity of the body-breaking feeling. After each intermission to catch their breath they would try again to leave, to go back to the village, but every time would end in failure. After hours of Ino's not ashamed to admit she absolutely loves the feeling of his molten man milk being vigorously pumped into her, or mouth. The rolling hills of bliss crashing lethally against her weakened body seemed to her like the only joy that could exist, and Naruto always seemed ready and eager to give it, knocking her out time and time again, to then wake to him devouring her or eating her out. Despite their growing exhaustion, the lovers find oblivion in each other until they both collapse. It was well into the night when Ino walked into her home on unsteady legs, dragging her travel pack on the floor behind her. "Honey, is that you?" Ino hears her mother call from the other room. Ino absent-mindedly deduced her mother was in the kitchen, likely putting away any leftover food. At the sweet sound of her mother's voice, Ino wants to cry. A great pang of unholy contamination is crammed into her chest as her vision fills with fat globs of tears that don't shed. Unable to trust her voice not to share her inconceivably horrid ordeal, Ino clamps a desperate hand over her mouth, shaking the globules of tears to rush down her cheeks and hand, as she just hums, To Ino, it felt like the entire story of her raw grief and debauchery could easily be detected in her tone alone. Despite how utterly filthy she feels, she wants to run to her pure mother for her solid protection and be told that everything was going to be alright. But she also wants to hide with just as much desire, to never let her mother know exactly how unclean her daughter has become. Her mother easily responds, "Okay. Your father and I are going to sleep. If you take a shower, keep it down. There's food in the fridge if you're hungry." Ino hears faint feet walk away, then silence. Crunching her appealing face in misery, the painful quiet of her home only aids the loud memories of her day, continually flooding her mind's eye and shaming her tears to fall faster down her semen-stained cheeks, dirty fingers, and button chin. She can already tell from the heat drowning her eyes, that she won't stop crying anytime soon. Ino slowly makes her way to her bathroom, eager to wash off the crusty lust-covered insanity of the day. No matter how many hours it takes, she doesn't plan on leaving until the job is thoroughly done. Though deep down she knows no amount of water or antibacterial body wash will ever erase what's been done to her once innocent temple, it won't stop her from trying. With never-ending memories of her acting like a corner whore as her fuel, how could she not scrub and scrub until she bleeds? In the bathroom and turned away from the mirror, Ino was struck with indecision. After everything she and Naruto did, how completely they satisfied their every animalistic desire, she's determined to decontaminate every millimeter of her well-used body. However, where to begin? Everywhere is her goal because he sucked, licked, or coated white every inch of her with such musky vigor. Scrubbing one area of her anatomy meant not disinfecting another, and she just wanted it all off. Ino wants to feel new again, pure and innocent, but she isn't anymore and she never will be again, birthing a fresh batch of tears. It was taking every bit of her clan's mental training to keep from breaking down. A daunting task when she simply considers the magnitude of losing her virginity at such a young age. It's an impossible task when she further considers how she also lost her anal cherry to the same idiot. In fact, any which way she's heard a woman can pleasure a man, Ino did it with Naruto, of all people. Oh Kami, I sucked him off. Her mind yells, effortlessly reliving the greedy blowjob she gave him both in her mind and on the lingering sensation of her swollen lips. Giving Naruto her first kiss would have been bad enough, but kissing, and licking, and sucking his fluid-covered just didn't make any sense to her. The buzzing of her experienced lips tells the story of how she returned the favor, happily and willingly, stunning her perpetually, asking herself, how? How could I have done that? With him. I'm not that girl. I'm not. Worse than her vivid recollections, her body is still humming with residual delight at the physical memory of him against her, of him in her. Ino's mind could not think of anything else. He me like a dog, and I loved it, who am I? Her mind asks, and her tears answer, you're sad. Tears mix with the water as she simply decides to start. She would have to wash everything his hands, mouth, and invaded, rubbed, sucked and pinched, thoroughly and repeatedly. She can easily feel the most tender parts of her body, and would deal with them, but the most sensitive issue is the copious buildup of sappy fluid still inside of her. He not only licked, sucked, and he erupted, deliciously she hates to admit, several large loads inside of her. For the trek back she had to use her filthy bindings to keep the pool of man milk from constantly leaking down her legs. If anyone saw her walking with trails of semen running down her thighs, Ino wouldn't survive the shame. It made walking back extra challenging as she felt the shifting weight of semen if she swayed too much. Sadly, it was nearly impossible not to, as her legs were terribly weak, and the natural grace of her walk already adds a racy sway to her eye-catching hips, a favorite feature of hers that now has finger bruising from his strong grip. Gripping the banister, she tries to stop thinking about all the vivacious activity that involved her nether region, already feeling herself growing warmer. Stop it, Ino, she warns herself, her tone almost pleading, but she can't, all the while wondering how her body can still feel so responsive after nearly 8 hours of full-on intercourse, oral stimulation, anal play, or massaging exploration. When she feels the heat of her tender folds grow slick with wanton anticipation, she rushes to the shower, turns the cold tap to full blast and stands under the shower head. The shock of its icy pain cascades through her system, doing what she doesn't seem capable of doing on her own, cooling down. The day started with so much hope and promise. Ino had not expected it to end with her crying under the loud shower head, wailing so loud she's certain her parents or at least her mother would rush in and check on her. No one does, and there she stays. Naruto. Nay, Naru-ni, why didn't you tell me I was going to have with Ino-chan? Wait. What? Naru-ni garbled as if coughing and choking at the same time. Naru-ni was coughing so hard, Naruto actually worries the prayer would cut off. With his hands clasped at the back of his blonde head, the divergenized genin walks to the unpopular training area to continue his chakra control training. He finds it much easier to talk aloud than in his head, and continues. Is this like when I asked if you knew who our parents are, and you said yes, but there's a good reason you wouldn't tell me? I never said I wouldn't tell you, Naruni returns with a somewhat raspier voice. I said it's for the best if the only thing you know right now is how they were. I said I'd tell you if you kept all this stuff about me in the future a secret. I have. Naruto throws back to no one in particular, as he's the only one traveling down the dirt road. I don't go back on my word, Naruni passionately replies. Me neither. Naruto returns. Humored, Naruni continues, I'll tell you after you learn Futon Rasengan, but trust me, it's just like keeping the QB a secret, the less people know the better. Now, what the hell is this about Ino? Twisting his face curiously, Naruto asks, didn't you have with her too? No, he bellows. No, I haven't had with anyone. Plus, I only have eyes for Sakura-chan, not that I didn't notice how some of the other girls were developing, but still, you're saying you actually had. With Ino, Yamanaka Ino, long blonde hair, blue eyes, curvy, always wears a purple skirt and top. That Ino. Naruto was nodding his head with a big smile the entire time, finally finishing with, yup. How? Naruni yells in truly astonishing disbelief. Wait, how come you haven't? Naruto asks, believing they must share the same experience if Naruni is from the future. Even someone as dense as Naruto knows that much. You're supposed to be the me from the future. Doesn't that mean that you know everything that's going on now, like, in the past? No. At least I don't think so, Naruni slowly comments, as if trying to gather his thoughts at that moment. I'm in a complete seal, remember. I'm cut off from everything. It was the only way to ensure I could have an uninterrupted chance of fixing everything. I have the memories I came in with, but I don't know how different things are since talking to you. I mean, you're learning stuff faster, so I gotta imagine that'll change things, but damn man, that's a hell of a change. Oh, Naruto gripes, before nervously adding, that sucks, for you, I mean. Show it up, Naruni yaps, easily recognizing his own smugness in his past counterpart. What about Sakura-chan? The older Naruto asks. Ugh, Naruto groans, griping his heart, nearly tripping over in guilt. I know. I'm worthless. I'm shit. How could I say she's the love of my life, then turn around and have with another girl? I couldn't sleep at all last night. I couldn't even look at her today. Naruto yells up at the skies. Hey, now, don't beat yourself up too much, he mildly puts. It's a generalization with a hesitant tone that spoke to how out of his depth older Naruto is in this conversation. And Ino, I'm sure she likes you just as much as you like Sakura-chan. I thought you knew me. Naruto bellows. I don't just like Sakura-chan. I love her. I know, Naruni sympathetically agrees. I couldn't even picture my life without her in it. Even now, the only reason why I'm pushing on is because she's one of my precious people I'm trying to save, and I won't let her down. It helps me, knowing training you protects her and keeps her safe. But, none of that means she'll love us like we do her, you know. Nor does it mean that Ino couldn't love us well, like you love Sakura-chan. But Ino doesn't love me. Naruto returns, still looking around as if there's someone there. Sulking at the memory, he plunges his hands in his pockets and kicks at stones while he walks. What? Naruni asks, clear confusion in his tone. I don't get it. She told me so, Naruto asserts. After we finished, she shoved me with an academy double palm, yelled at me, told me she'd kill me with poison ramen if I ever told anyone, and then she left. Even though it was hard for her to walk, she wouldn't even let me help her home. She yelled at me to stay away. Naruto can't help feeling like he'd done something wrong, or why else would she be mad? Okay. I need more details, Naruni responded. Start from the beginning because this isn't making sense, he said before quickly adding, if there isn't enough time left to help you train, then keep working on the first step. Now, what happened? The younger of the blondes explained to the older how she asked him to help her find a plant, how they met near the monument, how weird she was acting, then how she essentially jumped him. With a fair bit of trepidation, an embarrassed Naruto even admits he didn't do a good enough job stopping her, simply submitting to her demands. Wow! Naruni gasps, absolutely stunned before Naruto further explains. I was kinda scared at first and tried to stop it, but, she's Ino-chan, and she looks like she does, and it looked like she was hurting. I swear, it was like she needed my help, like, with her privates, which is totally bonkers, but I did it. Naruto trails off lost in memory for a moment before exhaling a deep sigh, then continuing. When I realized she wanted to do that adult stuff, well, she's so pretty and cammy, did it feel good, uggh, but that shouldn't matter, should it? I'm horrible, aren't I? I'm a sick pervert. You're neither a sick pervert or horrible, future Naruto responds. I honestly don't know how to explain that situation. It doesn't sound like you did anything to start it, but she seemed pretty upset at the end, I just don't know. That's a tough one. Should I tell Sakura-chan? Naruto weakly asks, his face crumbling and on the verge of tears. I just feel terrible. I think about how much I liked doing that with Ino-chan, then I think about how I betrayed Sakura-chan, and I get so confused. It's crazy. It was wrong because I love Sakura-chan, but it felt so right, and that means it means. Stop. Naruni commands, getting his younger self to stop. Listen carefully, because I only have a few more minutes. I don't think you should tell Sakura-chan. And I only say that because, well, she doesn't really see us that way, at the moment. It's super easy to feel how guilty you are over what you did with Ino, even when you have someone else you're in love with, but I think telling Sakura-chan is less about her, and more about you punishing yourself. And in our experience, we both know that never solves anything. The only thing I can say is try and focus on what you can control. What do you mean? He asks, clearing the corners of his eyes of budding tears. I mean, you'd still protect Sakura-chan and even Ino-chan if you had to, right? Yeah, he lamely answers. Of course you would, because they're still your comrades as shinobi of the leaf. Despite everything, at least you can say you always want them to be safe. How about their happiness? Do you want them to be happy? Of course, he responds as if that's obvious. There you go. That's another connection you share, right? They're still people that know you, and who recognize you. That's important. It means you can also, at the very least, be a good friend to either of them, because a good friend would want them to be happy. I can't tell you what's up with Ino, since that's way beyond my expertise, but if she's not acting normally, what do you think a good friend would do? Thanks to years of not knowing the answer to questions asked of him in the academy, Naruto immediately responds with his go-to answer, I don't know. Hearing Naruni's sigh makes Naruto take a moment to actually ponder the honest answer asked of him. I guess I'd ask her if she's doing okay. No, I'd make sure she was okay, and that I didn't do anything bad I shouldn't have. If that's how you truly feel, then I'm sure you'll figure it out, Naruni pleasantly tells his younger counterpart. Ah, can't you just tell me? Naruto asks. Sorry, I can honestly tell you this is way outside of my wheelhouse, his future self admit with a bit of a chuckle. Maybe find someone you can trust who knows more about that kind of stuff. I mean, I still can't really believe it. You and Ino. That's insane. Yeah. Naruto nods several times in agreement. Me neither. I use Kyre pinch myself like 40 times a day just to make sure I'm real and that it happened. No doubt, he says, though Naruto can hear his tone is fading. Just remember, whatever happens, you know in your heart you'll always protect them. Damn right, Naruto returns, but his future counterpart was already gone. Feeling a little better, Naruto spends nearly 3 hours running around the village, looking for Ino while his clones practice the first step of Rasengan in his apartment. He spent the entire week looking for her without success. His disappointment even masked all the positives that week had produced. Sakura-chan actually came up to him, to talk. He wasn't thrilled about the topic, as she only wondered if he might be a little more forceful in his spars with Sasuke so she can treat him, any excuse to touch him apparently. He didn't know if she was progressing well, but she seemed ecstatic about her study. Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke-tem remained as distant as usual, but he was starting to surprise them with his taijutsu. Suddenly it wasn't quite as easy for Sasuke to beat him when they sparred. Hell, his high spirits couldn't be denied when he finally got a chance to talk to Iruka-sensei. He snuck into his room after visiting hours and fortunately for the young genin, his favorite sensei was still awake. He didn't say much since he was still recuperating and very tired, but the older man made sure to tell him he didn't blame him for what happened before sleep took him. Naruto stayed in the darkroom for what felt like hours and would have stayed longer if a nurse didn't need to check the monitoring equipment. His most vital success was finally completing the first stage of learning Rasengan. Naruni happily congratulated him, wishing he could be there to give him a celebratory popsicle. Naruto didn't understand it, but he knows he would have liked that. Having only just succeeded in bursting the water balloon, he felt it was perfect timing as it would give him an uninterrupted weekend to start on the second stage of the amazing technique, power. It had been one of the best weeks of his life, but it always paled when his thoughts migrated to Ino-chan. Naruto had to make sure she was okay, and if possible, talk about what happened. So every day, he'd search for hours. He ran into several people multiple times, including Team 8 and their sensei, but never Ino. Despite running into the team 3 times, she was never with them. He immediately wanted to ask about her, but an image of her yelling at him, angry for asking about her, frustratingly kept him from taking the direct approach to learning what he wanted to know. So, he ignored the impulse to ask them directly, until the third time he ran into them looking for her. After days with no luck, he instead, in his roundabout way of trying to learn where's she been, jokingly asks, Ino-chan finally got tired of dealing with you too. Choji immediately defends his teammate, spouting back, no. She's just sick. Oh. Naruto returns, genuinely unhappy to hear. Sorry, I didn't know. Hey, do you guys want to train? I've been working on some killer new moves. They naturally turned him down, as he expected they would, and the moment he was far enough away, he raced to the Yamanaka compound. Having already explored most of Konoha as a neglected orphan, he knew exactly where he was going, and how to scout out the clan home. It wasn't as large as some of the other clan residences, like the Hyuga, Nara, Inuzuka, or Aburame. Aside from their large greenhouse, the Yamanaka didn't need quite so much space. After 30 minutes of covertly surveying the perimeter, he couldn't spot her through any windows, balcony, or in their flower shop, leading him to debate his next move. It isn't that he couldn't think of a way. He was just worried about the fallout, as it could easily lead to issues if he was found out. It had only been 5 days since their shared experience, and every day Naruto grew more and more worried, and so, after agonizing over the pros and cons for several minutes, Naruto just shrugs and hinges into Shikamaru. The spiky-haired lazy wasn't hard to imitate, and as Ino's team member, it wouldn't be odd if he showed up to check on her. Knocking on the main house door, a woman he wasn't sure was Ino's mother, as she didn't have blonde hair or blue eyes and seemed very rigid, opened the door. Still, in a sweet voice, rich with familiarity, she instantly recognizes the bored expression of her daughter's teammate. Shikamaru-kun, what a surprise. I had no idea you were stopping by. After showing the perfect imitation of Shikamaru's an enthusiastic exhale, Naruto calmly responds, I wasn't going to. I was just close by and wondered how Ino was doing. Oh, isn't that sweet of you, she says, either ignoring the slip or not drawing attention to it. That must be your mother's influence. I could never see Shika ever showing that level of concern. Too troublesome, he'd say. Unfortunately, dear, she's still unwell. Here, wait inside, and I'll see if she's up for a visit, she states, naturally moving aside and waving him in. Naruto nervously enters and Ino-chan's mom verbalizes her daughter's need to always look presentable. I know the importance of always presenting your best face, but teammates and strangers are two different things, I feel. Naruto only hums a bored agreement as the madam of the house retreats to her daughter's room. After 5 minutes, she returns with an apologetic face, and seconds later, he leaves their home. Deflated, Naruto returns to his apartment in failure. He spends that night wondering how he can see her without causing too much ruckus. Of course, he could break in, like he's been doing to see Iruka-sensei, but he didn't think that would turn out well on clan property. It was the next day, with Naruto's help, that Naruto figures out what he can do. Ino sat in her bed, legs bent under her so that her butt rests on her feet, staring forlornly at a pictured frame in her hand. The picture within the regularly polished oak frame was of her graduating class, after they had passed the exam but before team assignments. There were 20 students in the picture but Ino was only staring at one, the raven-haired, onyx eyes of Uchiha Sasuke. Gazing at the pale imitation of his likeness, her mind is a mess of thoughts about him, about her, about what happened, about it all. Deep down, Ino knows she's destined to be with him, though it always irks her no one else could neither see or accept that. Not that it mattered. In the end, she knew they would end up together. Simply put, she had a critical advantage. Unlike his other simple fans, she was heiress to one of the noble clans of Konoha. She couldn't claim to be the only heiress in their class, but that was yet another sign that fate favored her inevitable union with Sasuke-kun since Hinata-chan, the Hyuga heiress, was perpetually shy and showed no interest in the rookie of the year to begin with. No, out of all the girls that could be with him, she was the only one with the pedigree to be by his side, a fact Forehead always ignored. On top of that, much like all the girls rate all the boys by looks, Sasuke-kun being the clear victor, Ino was officially voted most beautiful girl in their class. She may have just missed out becoming top kunoichi, but that's always been more academic than practical. With beauty and clan alone, it was obvious she was the clear choice for Sasuke-kun's affection. And still, she had more to offer him. Her clan are specialists of the mind walkers, therapists, counselors, healers. On multiple occasions, her father explained the many ways their clan serves Konoha, and one of them happened to be healing mental anguish after surviving traumatic events, a vital service in a military village. She recalls vividly how her father felt such sympathy for Sasuke-kun after the massacre of his clan and his family. Her father cared deeply for his well-being, making her care too, but at the time, he worried more for Sasuke-kun's mental state, and what that loss will do to him. Ino will admit she lacks the expertise to properly treat his trauma, no matter what form that took, but she knew Sasuke-kun needed her more than anyone to help him heal from his suffering. She was the only one that could understand him, that could save him. They were made for each other. That's why it breaks her heart every time her memory wanders to the event that took place last week. She's meant to be with Sasuke-kun, to help him, to be his strength, and yet, she thoroughly debased herself with another boy, the weakest, loudest, dead last of their class, and worse yet, she was out of her mind in bliss for every second of it. Thank Kami, the idiot wasn't in the photo she was desperately clutching at. He hadn't passed the final exam, and despite the oddity of him showing up to team assignments, no one cared. However, after what happened, what they had done, Ino didn't need his photo to accurately picture him. It had been 7 days to the day, and she can still picture everything about his strong body so perfectly. Just thinking about him, undressed and on top of her, made her chest tight and her mouth water as much as her loins. Biting down hard on her plump lower lip, this was the burden she'd been dealing with all week. Thinking about him lights a fierce fire inside her, and since her debauchery, it's been a constant penalty Ino was frightened would last the rest of her life. She would wake up in the middle of the night to heart-pounding wet dreams, her sheets soaked with sweat and vaginal fluid, and more often than not, her practically useless fingers between her perspiring legs. Her body quite simply craved him, to feel his thickness inside her, to feel his steaming man-milk flood her. To Ino, it was the very definition of a drug. A Schedule I stimulant she was forcing herself to quit cold turkey by taking it upon herself to relieve her body's frequent cravings. If she didn't orgasm several times a day, she was afraid her fragile resolve to avoid him would break and she'd run to the loser for a full night of being gutted and buggered by his weird. After much thought and a lot of memory diving, Ino knows the way his ejaculates is most certainly not normal. It's not even common among humans. It's not even a medical condition to have. What Ino does know, is it's an extra layer of spice to her depressing shame. Somehow that deflowered her, that ruined her, has a bulbous gland at the base that expands during ejaculation, exactly like a dog. Her mind screams. Why would he have that? She would always yell in her mind. Is he part dog? Ino is fairly well informed by many of the older kunoichi in the bathhouse and the workers in the Yamanaka shop. If the Inuzuka clan had a feature like that, she would have heard about it months if not years ago. The fact that she, Yamanaka Ino, heiress to their clan, was knotted like a bitch by a blonde idiot dog boy is the greatest shame in her young life. Why did he do this to me? She mentally whines. Ino knew she was supposed to be with Sasuke-kun, but her body can't seem to forget Naruto. It's why she stayed in bed, cried often, and shut the world out. Her parents were obviously worried. Her mother, in particular, tried to connect with her detached daughter, guilting Ino into lying to them, assuring them that she's just sick and will feel better soon. She's not sure they buy it. She knew her team was worried as well. Asuma-sensei and even Shikamaru have come by to see her, but she didn't want to see anyone, she couldn't. Somehow, in the back of her mind, she expected them to know the moment they took one look at her. She somehow believed they would see his thick semen caked on her face and know it was from Naruto, which she's aware enough to admit was idiotic. Clearly, if her own mother couldn't see how excessively deflowered her only daughter now is, then Ino doubts anyone else will. It may be an irrational fear, but still, how could she just return to the world as if nothing had happened? A woman always has at least two masks, Ino recalls her mother telling her some time ago as they were arranging bouquets. It was an extension of the lessons given only to kunoichi in preparation for the specific dangers women face as well as methods of coping, in other words, how to compartmentalize. Some women need more than two, but one mask is for the world, and the other, if you're lucky, is for the one who accepts all of you. At such a young age and with more spirit than most, Ino never liked that concept. Masks were meant to hide, and Ino felt far too pretty to be hidden. You wouldn't hide a flower, her mind at the time reasoned. Ino understands far more now. It's another layer of her week's torment, as Ino's nearly certain Naruto has seen both her faces. She can't be sure, but every time she remembers his words, pleading to let him see her, to connect with her, she's fairly certain she had allowed what has to be her greatest moment of weakness. Through their eyes, souls connected, and it was the highest peak of pleasure Ino's ever felt, more still, the strongest orgasm her body won't allow her to forget. At the perfect recollection of his infinite sky-blue eyes peering into her very soul, her breath becomes shallow and quick. She grips the frame harder as she feels her body heat up with a searing focus between her legs, and her hardening nipples. She can feel moisture begin to dampen her panties and she clenches her teeth to fight it. After a full week of this, none of this is new, but fortunately, with every episode, she has an easier time managing the urges than the day before, to the point she doesn't need to masturbate in order to relieve her of her spontaneous lust. Eventually relaxing, her eyes slowly open to the photo in her hand, looking at herself beside Sasuke-kun, happy and proud. It feels like a lifetime ago, and she longs to return to that time, but slowly she's coming to the disheartening conclusion she'll never be the girl she was in that photo, beside her love, posing beautifully for the camera. It's a depressing thought. Her innocence is gone. It was enthusiastically taken from her repeatedly, and she'll never get it back. No, she hates to admit. It wasn't taken. I gave it away. Ino would honestly blame that dead last idiot if he wasn't so stupid, or more specifically if she hadn't been the one to initiate it, to push for it. She's not so horrible as to accuse him of rape simply because she momentarily went crazy for him and he eventually became very willing. Additionally, it would only cause her irreparable shame if it became public knowledge. How could she show her face once everyone learns who her first time was with? Would Sasuke-kun ever look at me after that? No, he wouldn't, she honestly answers. Ino knows the only way forward with the boy of her future is to put last week permanently behind her, and ensure not a soul ever finds out. That starts by returning to her routine, acting normal, meeting her team, her new mask, then finding the right time and public place to make sure that idiot takes this secret to his grave. Naruto may have lavished in her most intimate constitution, physically and spiritually, but that doesn't mean she won't kill him if he breathes a word of it to anyone. It'll be hard to look at him when they do meet, but she has to make sure he's aware that his life is forfeit if he ever talks. Hell, even if he inadvertently draws any unwarranted attention, I may just kill him, she mentally declares, enthusiastic for his murder. Ino. She hears her mother call fearfully urgent from downstairs. Come down here, now. Quirking a suspicious brow, the platinum blonde didn't want to leave the sanctuary of her room, but her mother's tone was frantic and was soon followed by her father's with just as much alarm. Ino. Get down here. Making a silent prayer to her raven-haired love in the photo for strength, Ino sets the frame back on her nightstand, before moving to her bedroom door. Ino grabs her silk robe on her way out because she knows her father doesn't appreciate her love of short shorts and tight tops. Making her way downstairs, she calls out, "Where are you?" Front door, her mother calls out. Huddled outside the front entrance of their estate is her father, mother, and two of her distant cousins, likely on their community watch patrol. They were bunched around a large chunk of dug-up earth the size of a large picnic basket, easily poking at her curiosity. Apparently, the large, heavy-looking square of freshly cut-out earth with its roots sticking out the bottom, was left for them to discover. While certainly unexpected, she couldn't understand why call her so frantically or why her father was leaning over and inspecting the top. Ino began to wonder about enemies the Yamanaka clan may have incurred when her mother turns to her, absolutely thrilled by the large box of dirt with vibrant green grass on the top. Her father was inspecting something on the top as her mother joyously tells her, "Oh, my beautiful, wonderful, amazing girl. Someone out there is extraordinarily worried for you." Ino is exceptionally confused until she steps around her father next to eager mother and her pupil-less blue eyes bulge. Her father confirms what she instantly knows. It's a genuine fire slipper orchid. He chuckles in disbelief, then turns to his daughter. "Here," her mother says, holding out a simple white paper board one might use to get an actor's autograph. "It came with this," she finished exclaiming. Ino understood all three of them knew what the orchid was worth, but she didn't understand her mother's excitement until she read the note in surprisingly uniform characters. For Ino-chan, I hope you feel better. Though normally very reserved, her mother is sashaying from one foot to the other, before asking her daughter the pertinent question that seems to be on all their minds. Sue, who's it from? Yes, Inoichi added, clearly uneasy about the gift and dreading what it could mean for his little girl growing too fast for his liking. Please, tell us his name. I'd love to know who'd bring you quite the gift. To thank him, her mother exclaims, looking at her father warningly. Not interrogate him. Her father's face grimaces, ready to argue yet, wisely picking his battles and remaining silent. What makes you think it's from a boy? Ino hotly asks, quirking her brow in suspicion at her father as his overbearing fatherly instincts are already triggered. Honey, he plainly returns. That block weighs at least 50 pounds and this type of orchid doesn't grow anywhere nearby. Someone quite strong carried this a great distance to bring it here. So, ignoring the pleasurable pulse between her legs as her body agrees Naruto is quite strong, Ino can't help but think, I'm going to kill him. In front of the man that raised her, his all-seeing eye staring at her, Ino falters desperately for a believable explanation, as the anger of her mind and arousal of her hot body interrupts her ability to lie. She wants to ease her father's suspicions, but lying to him has always been difficult, nearly impossible. It's why Ino generally speaks her mind because if lying doesn't work, then it's a waste of time to try. But she can't exactly tell him, Daddy, this is definitely a thank you gift from Uzumaki Naruto, you know, the worst student in our class, because I him every which way I could for hours. It's likely to give him a heart attack. An errant thought in her mind wonders if this gift makes her a prostitute, a terrible yet somehow thrilling idea that awkwardly makes her blush at the worst possible time. Her father's eyes easily picks up on her blush and judging by how his shoulders tense and how deeply he inhales, he didn't like it. Her mother mewls happily in her throat, then quickly rotates the teen by her shoulders, forcing her to march forward and away from a protesting head of their clan. Her mother leads them away as she tells her husband, Ichi, be a dear and store the orchid in the greenhouse. I'll examine it tomorrow. Being bypassed didn't help his fatherly anxiety as he calls out, wait. Ino, I demand you tell me who's it from. His demand had no real heat to it and her mother easily returns, if you can clear the table and do the dishes, I'd appreciate that, before they make their way up to Ino's room. Now, she starts once they've both settled on her bed. Ino, I know this is a meaningful time in your life. You're just starting your career as a kunoichi, you're growing into a very beautiful woman, and making sense of the balance between the two will be challenging. So, even if you don't tell me everything, I'd rather you not lie, okay? Say what you can. I'm going to kill him, Ino thinks, nodding her head since she didn't trust her voice at the moment. It's the only thought she could agree on as her mind desperately tried to think of a way out of this. I won't ask too much, because I want you to feel you can trust me with anything. But I do have to know, did a boy send you this? Recalling several countermeasures ninjas can use when engaging in duplicity, Ino felt the best way out of this was mixing omission with truth and letting her mother form her own opinions, because after all, there's no way they would believe the truth without sufficient time and proof. Ino takes a deep breath and asserts, you know I have my heart set on Sasuke-kun. Is that who sent it? As much as Ino wanted to sing to the high heavens, yes, if her parents, especially her intelligence-gathering father, ever decide to investigate her claim, that lie could make things far worse for her down the road. Ino shakes her head no, her long blonde hair flowing freely with her sway. I don't want to say who, mainly because the person who sent the orchid just isn't my type, like at all. My heart is set on Sasuke-kun, so, in the end, whatever he was hoping for by bringing it here was for nothing. Oh, I don't know if it was for nothing, sweetheart. What does psychology tell us about this gesture? Her mother asks. As a former psychologist, she's highly observant of behaviors, beliefs, feelings, relationship concerns, and even somatic responses. It's a very good reason, Ino's always felt more mature than many of the other girls from the academy, though forehead always manages to make her act like a child. Come on, Ino. We may not be geniuses like some of those Nara men, but we know the mind rather well, and there's quite a bit of information we can deduce here. His card, for instance. Ino's shoulders slouch at having to suffer through this because of that idiot. Quote. I don't know, he has neat handwriting. Well, that's true, her mother's agrees, looking it over again. Someone who possibly deals with seals on a regular basis. Ino can tell her mother's fishing, so just shakes her head to deny the suspicion. Can't blame a mother for trying. Anyway, let's consider the message. All he wrote was, I hope you feel better. No elaboration, not even his name, which denotes caution to reveal too much, but concern enough to go this far for you. There's also the possibility he doesn't care about credit. He used Ino-chan, which implies informality due either to his upbringing or he's simply that close to you. He's more than likely an engaging person, which is reinforced by the 50-pound block of dirt he carried. We don't know if he carried it all the way here, Ino interrupts. He could have used a cart or something. No, she returns. You don't know he carried it all the way here. Had you checked underneath, you would have seen handprints. A young person's handprint, likely around your age. Trying to give nothing away, Ino stays quiet long enough for her mother to say, Listen, sweetheart, I don't want you to think I'm pressuring you into telling me something you'd prefer to keep to yourself, so long as you're not in any danger, of course. You've always been a headstrong girl, and your decisions, good or bad, have been your own for a long time now. I just don't want you to dismiss facts because they don't align with your beliefs. I know how you feel about the Uchiha boy, but life is full of unexpected challenges and it's always worth the time to consider if these challenges are hazardous traps or fortunate opportunity. You know your father and I'll support whatever makes you happy. Ino stays quiet, unsure of how to think about her mother's caring words. They make a lot of sense, making her feel proud to have a mother like her, but of course, the older woman has no idea who the boy is or what they've done together. Maybe in another situation, she'd devote a fair amount of thought in the advice, but in this case, it's Naruto and there's no need for further reflection. Do you want to tell me more or would you like to be alone? Her mother gently asks. I'll think about it for a while, thanks, Mom. I'll let you know if I do anything. Okay, good night. Night, Ino says, offering her mother a decently sized smile, while mentally thinking, he's dead. Kurenai, how long have you known him for? Kurenai asks her student and ward. The dishes were clean and put away and they were settling down on Kurenai's living room's couch sharing a portion healthy tub of orange sherbet ice cream, Hinata's choice, to Kurenai's unexpected delight. Hinata avoids any eye contact as she tries to burrow deeper into the couch cushions. Hinata-chan, Kurenai starts with a small smile. In this house and with me, you never have to worry about what you say. You're safe to express yourself however you like here. I won't judge or belittle you for it and it will never be shared with anyone, from your father to the Hokage himself. The girl nervously asks, why are you asking me about Naruto-kun? Well, I noticed how you reacted when we ran into him, Kurenai easily points out. As a woman and your sensei, I could see that you're more aware of Uzumaki-kun than any other boy. Kurenai didn't think it was possible for the girl's cheeks to get redder but they blush another shade brighter as she quietly answers, I wouldn't say I know him. We were in the same C class. Kurenai could easily detect the omission in the girl's averted eyes, tone of voice, and flustered face. She was too easy to read, yet another part of her skills they needed to work on. Having lived with the heiress for over 2 weeks now, running into Uzumaki-kun is about the only time Hinata-chan reacted differently. They had run into him as their team exited Hokage Tower, and while Hinata blushed stunningly from face to neck as the orange-clad ninja greeted them, Kurenai noticed the girl's beautiful white eyes focus unlike any time she'd ever seen. They were sharp, sure, assertive. The raven hurried Kunoichi isn't sure why, but it was clear the girl had a crush on him. She easily recalls looking over the other team's profiles, discovering like everyone else, that the young blonde was the dead last of the class. Furthermore, he was an orphan with no exceptional talent. While she heard he defeated the traitor Mizuki with Cage Bunshin, she also heard he can't produce a single Bunshin, leading most to the conclusion that it must have been sheer dumb luck the boy brought down the traitorous Chunin. Still, it's more than possible Hinata's interest in the blonde stretches beyond clan or talent. It's feasible there's something that Kurenai is missing that could be a key driving force for the shy girl's future. Kurenai needs to learn if Naruto-kun is something she could utilize to help drive her ward, or if it's another dead end. Honestly, Kurenai hoped this panned out. She was eager to prove Hiyashi wrong, but more than anything, she didn't want to fail Hinata-chan. As things stand, the Hyuga heiress was timid to a fault. While manners, kindness, and consideration of others were good traits to have, Hinata-chan takes it to a detrimental level, adversely impacting her own growth simply to avoid any kind of confrontation, a fact Kiba-kun is starting to take notice of and unfortunately, enable. Kurenai needed to break her meekness, and if possible, light a fire under the girl's belly. Testing a theory, Kurenai gently asks, "He was the dead last of your year, wasn't he?" Kurenai was happy, no, thrilled to see that it had the desired effect when Hinata-chan looks directly into her red eyes and somewhat sternly tells her, that wasn't his fault. The instructors were mean to him. As quickly as the girl's confidence appeared, it had departed. Slowly sliding a moderate helping of ice cream past her red lips to her lapping tongue, Kurenai can't help but be happy by the small bit of progress. It wasn't much, but it was something, and like the fragile light of an ember, she'll slowly coax it into a grand fire. Eager, yet gentle with her young ward, Kurenai follows up by asking, "What do you mean it wasn't his fault? He did